What's up everyone, it's blyzrd and welcome to a little bit of a different style of video today. So we're going to be taking a look at the power rankings and updating them, and then we're also going to be talking about the MVP race and a little bit about how certain Pokemon have shined, how certain teams have made improvements to be towards the top, what makes great teams great, what some of the bottom teams might be able to do to improve themselves. And this should be a bi-weekly video, so because we're now done with week 2, I will be talking about the teams, and this will be updated as of week 2. Next video should be updated as of week 4, and then 6, and then 8, and then we'll also maybe do one for playoffs too. But yeah, without any further ado, let's get right into it. You can see here there are a lot of changes from the initial power rankings, which were before the season and were based on strictly the team, not the coach at all, and not anything else, just kind of how good I thought that the team might be just based on its potential. So yeah, let's get into it. And unfortunately, someone has to be last. And because Oedipus is the only real 0-2 player, because Wa just subbed in, it pretty much goes to Oedipus by default. I just think he's not exactly taking advantage of his synergy and like the surprises, or he's taking advantage of like some cool strategies, but there's a lot left to be explored, and maybe he's saving them for specific matchups, but I think he could be doing more with the team he has. It's only 2 weeks in, so going 0-2 is not too bad, right? You can always bounce back. So yeah, let's move on to SnB. I think he makes a lot of sense at 13 here, just because his performances in the past 2 weeks, especially last week. Week 1, he won, but he didn't play particularly great, and his opponent made like several important blunders that gave him the opportunities he needed to win. And this past week, he was just completely unprepared for Eternum's team, and it felt like he was kind of forcing a strategy that Eternum could very easily counter. And that's kind of part of the danger with running a Sunroom team in draft. It's just because it's super straightforward, and with any like very hard Trick Room team or hard Sun team, if you know it's coming, it's so much easier to shut down. And he hasn't really been able to deal with the answers to that people have to his team. So yeah, that's why I put him at number 13 right now. And then at number 12, we have TBL. So I think his team has a lot of potential, and he showcased that week 1 actually. He had a pretty tough matchup in my opinion versus Eternum, but he played pretty well. And week 2, it kind of was a different story. So he had no means of shutting down Pillza's Araquanid, or that was the specific problem on, but he just kind of couldn't do anything against Pillza, and it felt like a very one-sided battle, especially because he set up the rain for Araquanid both games, and so Araquanid was just something that TBL had pretty much no answer to. So number 11, we have Wa, or Abyssare. He has a pretty good team, actually, I think. The team he took over was a pretty solid team who lost to SnB week 1, but he's going to be making up his match for week 2. So at this point, like, he's starting 0-1, so he's not technically 0-2. So that's probably why I'm putting him like a little bit higher than some 1-on-1 people, especially because he's probably the best draft league player out of this bunch, in my opinion at least. He's more of a singles guy, but just being so good at draft kind of translates pretty well, and he is pretty good at VGC too. It's not like he's bad by any means. So he's very much a threat, and he made some additions to his team that I think really improved it. Like, he has an option for a sand core with like Garchomp, Poundstone, and Hippowdon. He has a nice Firewater Grass core of Whimsicott, Arcanine, Milotic. Hisuian Sneasel's great for like Fake Out, and it's like a worse Sneasler pretty much for half the cost. Vikavoolt's great in Trick Room, very incredibly strong Pokemon. Alolan Persian, another great Fake Out user. You have Stab on your knockoffs and your Snarls. Budget pick, but it's a good team, so I feel like he can definitely make it shine. But for now, putting him here, and don't pay any mind to his Delta, because that's not a team he was taking over really, and he did make a lot of changes to it. So alright, let's move to Dorimusuta, who's someone that I think has a lot of potential given his week 2 performance. He took down Saline, and he didn't have a great showing week 1, honestly. He kind of didn't have any real answer for Soup's team, but his team has a lot of potential, a lot of good Pokemon on it. And I think if he makes a few additions, or changes in his team, I think it could go a long way. His performance against Salient, I think that showed that he's pretty creative. Like, he has like good fundamentals, so kind of once he gets more of like the technical stuff down, I think he'll definitely be more of a threat, but not a bad player by any means, and not a bad team by any means. Let's move on to number 9, who we have Charcoal. I have him here just mainly because of his performance week 1 against Sibon. He kind of got smoked. I thought that he actually had a pretty favorable matchup into Sibon's team, and it didn't work out very well. He felt like he kind of couldn't do too much in the matchup, even though I think he had the tools to. So I think that was very unreflective of him as a player, and week 2 he kind of showed that off. He won, and it only went to 3 games because of a 5% chloroblast miss. So he did play very well in that set, and I think he will continue to kind of improve, and I definitely see him rising in the ranks. Great player with a very scary team. Moving on to Pillza. I think Pillza also has a pretty good team, and it's a little unusual, so some opponents might not know what to expect from it, but I think it is pretty good. And he kind of has answers for a lot of matchups on a lot of teams, which I think is pretty good. He is also a newcomer to ODL, but he is learning from Charcoal and I, and we're kind of helping him out a little bit, and he is a lot of good fundamentals, kind of like Dorimusuta in that sense. So I think with the season going on, I only expect him to rise. And how power rankings work is somebody has to be towards the bottom, right? Or somebody has to be last. So even the teams towards the bottom, I expect to do better. Not that Pillza's towards the bottom, but I think everyone's going to improve. I don't think anyone's going to get worse over the season. And hopefully as seasons go on, people just get better and better. Which makes it more fun and more competition, right? And then I think I mentioned Alberto a little bit earlier, but let's talk about his team a little bit because it has improved so much in my opinion. It started off like very kind of one-dimensional, with like super fast, no trick room answers. He had a snow mode that was like questionable, and almost all physical attackers. So that's why I put him last in the initial power rankings. But since then, he's made a lot of good changes. I think that picking up Dusclops and Hisuian Avalugg makes his Trick Room mode significantly scarier, along with Golurk. He also picked up Galarian Slowking recently, so those 4 mons are all great in Trick Room and great at stopping Trick Room. So beyond being able to stop Trick Room, he actually now has a Trick Room mode that he can run as his primary mode, with something like Sneasler in the back for when Trick Room ends. So he actually has a lot of potential there at catching his opponents off guard with running Trick Room as his primary strategy. Galarian Slowking and Porygon Z are amazing additions in the special attacking department, which is somewhere he was lacking. And he's played pretty well. I beat him fairly handily in my week 2 matchup, but week 1 he played pretty solidly against Pillza. I think I gave him the nod over Pillza just because he won that head-to-head matchup. So yeah, let's move on to Saline, a team that I definitely underestimated. I thought it would be good, and kind of the more I looked at it, especially in the initial power ranking stream, but from my matchup as well, it's just gotten scarier the more I've seen its potential, and partially just because he's a good player too, honestly. I think that helps a lot, but played pretty well. He beat me week 1 because he was the better player. I had a lot of RNG on my side and a lot of RNG not on my side, but he played better, so he deserved that for sure. And then his week 2 loss, it was nothing too bad. I think he played fairly respectably against Dorimusuta, and maybe just wasn't anticipating some of the strategies, but he definitely deserves his spot at number 6 for sure. So now we're actually approaching the top 5, and I think all of these top 5 teams are great, and this 3 through 5 list, I think they could really go in any order, but I have them in this order for the reasons I will explain. So, Soup, in my opinion, has easily one of the strongest teams in the league. I think his top 8 mons are all very easily bringable, and like especially those top 7 are really great, like his C tier mons and above. Really good team. It's very well rounded for that reason, and is comfortable in both Trick Room and Tailwind, so he has a lot of speed options that he could run. Dragonite, Farigiraf, his 2 best Pokemon, are if he leads those two, I mean, he could be going for either on any given turn, so can really catch his opponents off guard. Though I think the biggest concern I do have with it that I wasn't really thinking about as much before is the setup required. So most of his team actually requires setup to be really scary. He could like run choice band or choice specs on some things to help kind of boost that little bit of damage to make them scary right away, but it feels like a little bit vulnerable to that, and we really saw that in his matchup versus Juvey. So he played a great week 1 against Dorimusuta, played very well, but against Juvey he got kind of smoked, and Juvey's a great player with a great team, but his team's lack of offensive pressure really shined. Like, I think he probably brought his best 6 months into Juvey, and he still lost, and it felt pretty one-sided, especially game 1. I will say, thinking about it, his game 2 adaptions were great, and he played very well in game 2 and turned what looked like a match that was already over into a very close game. I still think for that reason I have to put him at number 5, but still deserves to be top 5 for sure. Next, at number 4, we have Eternum. He's someone I feel very comfortable putting at number 4, especially because of his win this past week versus SnB. I thought not only did he do well, he also put up an Elysium-worthy performance, and I thought that he played really well. But partially why he got Elysium was because he had really good prep, and that's something we've seen from him in Season 2. I actually said that he is probably the best player in the league when it comes to prep, and that's something that I still probably hold to be true. So he is definitely a threat when it comes to, like, he might have a very big advantage before the match even starts, regardless of gameplay, but he also plays pretty well. So I think number 4 is a good spot for him to be, and the only reason he isn't in the top 3 is because of his loss week 1. He had a pretty good matchup in my opinion versus TBL, and he lost 1-2, but regardless of that, he is still clearly one of the top teams to look out for. Moving on, I have myself at number 3. I think I put myself just barely in the top 3 despite losing week 1 because of how close the set was, and because I played pretty well in my 2-0 win versus Alberto. I think my team's pretty good, and at times week 1 it was like pretty obvious that I wasn't too familiar with it. I've been playing well enough, and especially week 2, I've been playing well enough to let it shine and kind of show kind of the strengths of it. And I have had some lucky moments in both sets, but I've also had some very unlucky moments. So it's kind of hard to say how that has affected my success. I wouldn't say it has really. So I think I would put myself at number 3. Let's move on though towards the top 2, and these top 2 teams are both undefeated. Sibon is technically because he is, again, making up that matchup. So he's 1-0 right now instead of 2-0. But to me, I think he's a top team. And there's something really interesting about his team. To me, his team success relied on, and still really relies on, almost entirely, the success of his duos. So he has a team that's almost like a 2-2-2 team, where if you guess the wrong duo on the lead, then you could immediately be put in a bad position. It might maybe just a straight up losing position. And he has a lot of really good duos. So like Clefable and Basque Legion for redirection and letting Basque Legion get off really strong adaptability attacks. He has Slacking, Glaring, Wheezing is a very obvious duo, works very well of getting rid of Slacking's bad ability. You can run Will-O-Wisp or whatever to kind of help keep Slacking on the field. And then he has Mamoswine and Rotom Heat and Rotom Mow actually, but he's kind of used Rotom Heat so far. And very nice for Earthquake and Discharge spam. Good for Electro Web to lower the speed. Ice Shard, very strong priority move. So 3 great duos, but the problem with those 2-2-2 teams is that when a duo is missing its partner, or when the team is out of position, it means his team is significantly weaker and way easier to exploit. So it's not too hard to beat him if you can just get him out of position. But one thing I failed to consider for Sibon is how good he would be at positioning. He's been great at positioning his team. He's only played 1 set so far, but it felt like a great matchup for his opponent in my opinion. And he won 2-0 very convincingly. So I think overall I put him at number 2 because he's a great player that makes an average team look incredible. I don't think it's really his team success. I think it's all him. Whereas someone like me or Soup kind of can rely on our team a little bit more, just because of how it is pretty strong. I think his success is coming from his coaching. And that brings us to number 1, who's Juvey. And I will say Juvey has far surpassed my expectations. I thought before the season, his team was it was pretty straightforward of a rain team with Archaludon, but he didn't have any real support for Archaludon. He picked up Pelipper, he had Scrafty, but that's kind of it. So I thought, yeah, people are going to be able to find counters to this and beat it kind of no problem. But he made some trades. I think picking up Comfey was also huge as well, because it can obviously heal back Archaludon 50% before anyone else can move, which is really, really nice. And I think his team has become a real threat because of that. He's played it very well. In his first 2 sets, he showed that he's actually a really good player, and he won both sets convincingly, although there was a little bit of a comeback game 2 in the Soup matchup. He still played very, very well, and he's been the better player in both matchups, and that's no fault to his opponents. I think he's just played really well. So I think there's no one more deserving after these first 2 weeks of the number 1 spot than Juvey, for sure. All right, let's now take a look at our MVP standings. And there are a lot of Pokemon I want to point out. So especially, let's start kind of towards the bottom. Looking at the top 10, or 6 through 10, I guess. First of all, TBL, I had him pretty low in the power rankings, yet he has the number 6 and the number 9 Pokemon, which is pretty funny. I think 2 great Pokemon, just because Politoed can set the weather for his team, especially Ludicolo is the big rain abuser on that team. But Annihilate is also obviously a super strong Pokemon. So pretty funny to see them both up there. I think Politoed, though, is just from Parasong. I think that's the only reason he's that high. And you can see that both of them actually do have 4 deaths as well. So a little caveat there, but still impressive nonetheless. Charcoal actually has 2 top 10 Pokemon as well, with number 5 and number 10. And Ursaluna, you 100% expect to be up here, just because very strong Pokemon with 140 attack, I believe, with Guts on top of that, and Facade on top of that, which is Stab, and Headlong Rush. Is super strong Pokemon, right? But Skeletor is also surprisingly up here, who was really good in his week 2 matchup, exceptionally good in that matchup. So pretty cool to see him up there. And then Saline also has 2 Pokemon up here, and one of them I would never have guessed. Passimian being up here, very impressive. Partially because Passimian pretty much beat up on me week 1, so no surprise to see him towards the top, but number 3 is higher than I might expect. And then Salamence as well is Pokemon you might expect, just because it is a strong Pokemon, but doesn't always get a chance to really shine. So it's good to see him up here. Dorimusuta's Incineroar is also pretty cool. You'll see with Farigiraf, Porygon 2, and Incin, and Politoed to an extent, these are Pokemon that are kind of primarily support Pokemon, but they're also really good attackers. And they kind of do 1 or 2 things that are really support based, and then the rest is attack based. And so they can be way scarier than you kind of give them credit for. So cool to see all of them up here, especially Porygon and Farigiraf in the top 4 is pretty cool. And yeah, Porygon deserves it because he's been serving me very well so far. And Farigiraf being 7-2 is pretty impressive. It kind of is a testament to how well Soup's been playing, because Farigiraf is not kind of the Pokemon you expect to be the kill leader of a team. So pretty cool that he's up here. And then at number 1, not a huge surprise to anyone who's played ODL before, but Archaludon is at the top. I think this is because Juvey's team is quite good. So I think once people kind of find ways to deal with Arch a bit better, then they can hopefully shut it down from being such a menace. But I think there are definitely ways to beat Archaludon that people haven't really kind of considered, and nonetheless Archaludon is a great Pokemon, so seeing it at the top of the MVP standings is no surprise. So that's about it. These videos will be bi-weekly, so expect another one after week 4, and hopefully you can notice your team moving up in the ranks rather than down. But yeah, hopefully this gave you kind of a good overview of where the league is at right now, and good luck to any and all teams out there. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.